Welcome to this video. Uh, this video starts about the risk of not seeing other imminent major threats, much more deadly or that could lead to extinction, because being too much focused on one viral disease, which is COVID-19. That is fine. We must be alert. It is presented by CDC like a perfect storm. In other places by other organizations it's presented like a double threat, etc. So it is a threat, for sure, but we cannot only focus on one threat, especially not only on a viral threat, because it's much less mortal than bacterial threat, and the potential of fungi being more mortal and leading to extinction is higher than for viral infections. So we cannot let down our guards. In fact, this is a warning by itself, because it's warning for antimicrobial resistance, and that has even nothing to do with virus, because it doesn't work against virus. It works against bacteria and against fungi, and they are warning. So we know in this alert we already see the risk for bacteria and fungi, etc. for 700,000 zoonoses, probably a large part being non-viral. But people probably don't get that it's talking about COVID and a perfect storm, but the danger is about other threats than viral threats, because of this antimicrobial resistance and antibiotic resistance that is rising, and that the organization have difficulty to follow up and to inform us. So all that protected us was antibiotics, surveillance and control by antibiotics. It is under threat. This diagram showed it. It's talking about the perfect storm. It's not talking about COVID also. But the perfect storm is something else than COVID. So, in other words, we're, at least the public, is holding on to a false security, because it was secure, but what made it secure is under threat. Everything about it. It's the antibiotics under threat, it's the antimicrobials under threat, and it's the surveillance and control that is under threat. So okay, next. Viruses are not the largest threat. There's one simple argument. A virus depends on the host for replication and for about everything of its cycle. So if the host dies or gets extinct, the virus is gone too, at least in humans. So that's different with fungi and bacteria. They can even thrive on dead bodies. Probably they thrive a lot better and quicker on dead bodies. That is also shown in the case of COVID deaths in intensive care. Suddenly, even before they die, or while dying or shortly after dying, they get filled up with antibiotic resistant bacteria and fungi. So the proof is there. When a person dies, the virus comes to an end, but all the rest does not. That's probably why you see these images of bodies in body sacks in a refrigerators, that is not because of the virus, that is because of the ones that I try to alert for as the real threats that were far from us since antibiotics 1928. So we forgot about it, but it's not gone, it's there, and it's there in the COVID deaths. It's thriving, it's taking over those bodies, but it's taking over the bodies of living persons too. That is, we call it superbugs or hospital bugs. So the biggest threats are microbes that can cause infection by air, because that goes quicker, and that can thrive and reproduce even on dead or very ill bodies, and especially that can survive in soil. Well, plague can do that, all of that, and fungi can do all of that. A virus can do none of these except for spreading by air. It's a little bit more complex, but I think I could show that viruses are not the largest threat. These threats of bacteria and fungi, in my view, have to do with identity of the cell and the herd. I will try to explain. I start because there is an identity of cell and herd, but I pull the herd and I talk about identity of the cell, because this is probably new for the general public. The cells that make up human bodies and other species have to make clear their identity, and let's say understand their known defenses to the non-viral organisms like bacteria and fungi. The identity has to put of them. They don't want to lose time trying to attack a human cell that is well defended and will kill them. They will only go when they don't see it's a human cell that knows to defend itself, like in dead bodies in intensive care after they die. Then they have no limit. They are very fast. They have no resistance. There's no longer identification, and there is no defense, and they will know, and they will explode and take over that body. And if there's antibiotics in that body, and for sure there was, then they will get resistant to that antibiotic in a matter of hours, less than 24 hours. And they start to do that. They can do that even before the person is dead. So identifying that you're human and that you have defense is an essential part of innate immunity. If cells do not clearly identify themselves as human cells with clear defenses, bacteria will see them as food or trash that they can eat and move towards these human cells, because bacteria can move, fungi can move by growing. They are not passive like a virus is, that is fluctuating on air or fluids. So we heard about historic plague, but I did not hear about fungal epidemics and pandemics, because we have seem to have now a problem that historically we didn't have. That is frightening. Plague we had, but fungal epidemics and pandemics we did not have. And we seem to be on the road to fungal epidemics and pandemics, possibly at some point. This is very worrying, possibly even more worrying than Black Death coming back. But it's worse if they come back both at the same time, and later I will show that is the case. I won't talk here about plague re-emerging because I do that in another video. I just remember that plague is re-emerging according to the health organizations. Now we'll talk superficially about we being on the road for fungal epidemics and potentially pandemics. I won't read it. There's a few articles that I quickly searched. This is only 6 days ago. An emerging fungus considered an urgent antimicrobial resistance threat. That is sufficient. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'm not sure if this is CDC, but it's from a government. It's CDC. Fungal disease outbreaks are rare. Were rare. They're not rare anymore. And here the same CDC is warning. It's emerging. It's an urgent threat. And it happens at an alarming rate. So I think I don't have to read other articles. This is recent too. Viruses have, when it comes to infecting people. Well, that's nice, but why is it re-emerging? Why is it alarming? That is because our cells are not identifying themselves and are not defending themselves, and the fungi and bacteria like plague already have found out. But here I don't talk about plague. That's in another video and videos. Could a deadly fungus really? And we already heard the words antimicrobial resistance. So, and here an article, The Last of Us zombie fungus pandemic is fiction, but, so if you want you can read it. But it's not necessary, it's clear enough. Canada was something innocent and suddenly it's a problem. Why? So in my view it has to do with identity of showing the identity. We're getting incapable of showing our identity and show, don't attack us because you will lose your time and we will get you. And well, this is what I mean with the identity. It's not an identity of, this is another identity. This identity hypothesis, that you are losing our identity, has two parts. Research part. Researchers have to discover and be aware of all our identities, especially the genomic ones. This is one, and this is another that I have studied for a long time now. We have to find out how each group thrived and what its vulnerabilities are, because the threats are there. We just showed them. So what the vulnerabilities of a group were, are, and where they come from. We have to understand as much as possible. So what caused them? What caused these vulnerabilities? I talk about this in videos, but here again, science and consensus do not consider these groups. They are not interested in haplogroups a lot, other than to say that we come out of Africa, which is not the case. About ALU, it are transposable elements. They give very confusing information, so it's not, this identification of groups is not of great interest of science and consensus. I'm warning for this lack of interest. There's a lack of interest because it's difficult and it's inconvenient for science and consensus, because they have kind of to admit that nature has its own way to solve things, always had. So now we are approaching the perfect storm. We need to pay attention, and I'm presenting at least part of what we need to know. This is, in my view, also important. So there are several groups which identify themselves and which have unique threats and solutions to these threats. The threats, let's say the plague of a certain group, let's say the plague that bothered and almost extinct haplogroup R1, that is Western Europeans. It has its own pathogen. That was a pathogen that was Yersinia pestis, that was typically for Western Europeans, for that haplogroup. And as long as they are independent, the pressure is lower. So what I'm afraid of, warning for, is that these initially independent threats will come together. Instead of one enemy, suddenly a group has 10 or 20 enemies, and they will need treatment, and that means antibiotics, and it will fuel antibiotic and antimicrobial resistance and will add to the perfect storm. Not sure if which is an indication on threats. I will show on another occasion, it's in another video, that each group, let's give one small example. South Africa has its own variant at some point. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it has at least 2 variants. It's probably one of the first to have a variant. I forgot the name. Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma. But initially, South Africa had its own COVID. I have to explain better, but there's a threat here, because instead of having one enemy, we have more. But until now, each enemy, each threat, relatively stays to its region or group, and by now the herd, all the groups together, are gaining resistance. I just mentioned it. I did not work it out, but like South Africa, each important haplogroup in this world acquired its own COVID variant initially, and then it started to mix up. And when it started to mix up, let's say whoever causes the COVID infection had choice. So instead of preparing in South Africa for one variant, they have to prepare for all variants, because, well, I think everybody knows by now. And so the expansion of threats and the mixing of threats fuels the perfect storm, and at the end, antimicrobial resistance, which is our main defense. Surveillance doesn't even make sense if you cannot control when you discover. So it's kind of lost if you detect an elephant and you have no weapon against the elephant. And that's where it's all about. That's here, but you don't see it very much from the title. So it's like false security. I'm not sure if it matters. I think I said it more or less. The threat being a first time threat, that means if a threat that was for South Africa, I'm not talking about the virus, I'm talking much more about bacteria and fungi. If a threat that first sort of belonged to South Africa gets in, let's say, in Europe or in China, then it's a first time threat. Nobody has resistance against that or immunity against that. And together with this, the resistances we had historically in certain regions or globally, we're losing them. So it's a kind of a collapse, and we have to understand every little bit of this collapse. So I will leave this for the next video, but understanding where we come from, where our immunity comes from, has everything to do with the Amazon amarants, with amarants in general, but most with Amazon amarants. While they'll still live and still have their lifestyle, we, especially we, but also they should let's say understand it and take care of it, because habits are changing, lifestyles are changing. Certain tribes that didn't have obesity already start to have the first signs of obesity, and obesity can lead to insulin resistance, and it can lead to degeneration, can lead to susceptibility for the degenerative diseases, and then to COVID, and then to bacteria, and then to fungi. So we don't have that much to study out of the past, and in other videos, who assist other videos will know that I prove that the Amazon amarants are our ancestors. They are not just the ones that populated South America. They are ancestors of all modern humans. There is like 10 to 20 fundamental proofs, while there is not one fundamental proof that proves that we are out of Africa. So still today, these Amazon amarants present superior heart and brain health, and it's not just a little bit, it's 5 times less dementia, it's 70% less degeneration. That's year on year on year. So this 70% less degeneration of the brain leads, amongst others, to 5 times less dementia. And dementia and Alzheimer are neurodegenerative or simply degenerative diseases, and they lead to death. So that's for the next